The legs of those guests weren't entirely human anymore. They ended
What?
in these hooved feet, moving with an animal's grace.
Freaking real life furries, sheesh! Today's spooky story, you guys recommended this channel from Dark Asia with Megan. This is her spooky story channel. She sang at a spirit's wedding and none of the guests were human. Well, I mean, it is called a spirit wedding. She didn't know. That's even sadder.
So this actually happened to a singer named Nora back in 1997 in Kuwait. And I know everyone says their ghost story is true, but this one is different. Nora was pretty famous back then. She had this incredible voice and ran a wedding band that was basically the go-to group if you wanted your celebration to be remembered. And you know how it is with wedding singers in the Middle East. They are like rock stars in their own right.
Oh, really?
But anyways, it was a regular summer evening.
We do have wedding bands, but I don't know about kind of like rock bands type of famous, you know? Is anyone from the Middle East? Do tell me.
When she got the call. Kuwait in summer is absolute hell, by the way. So here we're talking 45 plus degrees Celsius.
I could imagine.
113 Fahrenheit. It's the kind of heat where your car's steering wheel can burn your hands. And Nora had just gotten home from another wedding gig, probably exhausted when her landline rang. And remember, this was 1996.
And this is back in 1997. If that time it's already that hot, imagine the time now.
No mobiles really, just those chunky home phones everyone had. And the guy on the other end spoke in really formal classical Arabic. That was the first slightly weird thing, but whatever. Some of the older, traditional families still spoke that way. He said his daughter was getting married, and he'd heard Nora was the best. Could she and her band perform in 3 weeks? Nora checked her schedule, and the date was free. So they talked money. He was offering good money, half up front like usual.
Maybe the dad isn't a spirit, or is he? Is the money even usable?
And then he gave her the address. And
or
this is where it starts getting a bit odd. The location was way outside the city, past the 6th Ring Road, out toward Jarrah,
the red flag.
Another 20 kilometers beyond the farms. He said someone would meet them at a water tower to guide them the rest of the way. Now, this wasn't completely crazy. Lots of wealthy families back then still did weddings at home instead of hotels. The really old money families, the ones whose wealth came from pearls and trade before oil, they often had these massive estates outside the city where they could celebrate privately, away from the prying eyes and gossip. So Nora didn't think too much of it. The money showed up 2 days later. Cash in an envelope, no return address. A bit unusual, but some families are weird about privacy. 3 weeks passed, Nora and her band practiced all the usual wedding songs. You know, the classics, the ones every Khaliji wedding has to have. Khaliji basically means Gulf Arab. So we're talking traditional songs from Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, UAE, that whole region. The band was tight. Layla played oud, that's like a Middle Eastern lute, this beautiful pear-shaped string instrument. Miriam was on
it looks like a guitar. And a broken one.
drums. Fatima and Sarah did backup vocals. And this young guy, Hassan, handled all their equipment. They've been performing together for 7 years and had an amazing reputation. The day of the wedding they loaded up 2 cars, Nora's Land Cruiser and Hassan's beat-up pickup truck, and headed out just before sunset. They drove north on the Jarrah Road, watching the city gradually fade into suburbs, then scattered farms, then just desert. The water tower appeared right where the guy said it would be, this massive concrete thing rising up out of nowhere.
Wait, since it's the desert at night, it will be very cold? Back then, the desert is already so hot in the morning. How about now? Global warming, you know?
And there was someone waiting, a man in traditional dress, wearing a white dishdasha. That's the long white robe Gulf men wear. And a red-checked gutra, the headscarf. His face half covered in the dim light. He gestured for them to follow him and got into this old Mercedes that looked like it was from the 70s, but was somehow gleaming like new. They followed him off the main road onto what was barely even a track, just tire marks in the sand, really. Layla was riding with Nora, and she started shifting around uncomfortably. "This is really far out," she said. "Rich
Are we
people
gonna
like their
get
space,"
kidnapped?
Nora replied, but honestly, she was starting to feel uneasy too. You know that tightness in your stomach when something's not quite right, but you can't put your finger on it. They drove through the dunes
Sixth
for like
Sense.
half an hour in the dark. Kuwait's landscape is so flat and featureless that at night you can get completely disoriented. And then suddenly, there it was, this absolutely massive mansion. It was built in the old Kuwaiti style, you know, with wind towers, these traditional cooling towers that catch the breeze, and courtyards, but huge, way bigger than it needed to be. And every window was blazing
So
with light.
rich.
Despite being in the middle of nowhere, it looked perfectly maintained.
She likes doing her
The
facials.
Mercedes just disappeared
It's all
around
her
back,
brand.
and their guide was gone before Nora could even say thanks. A woman met them at the door, fully veiled in that old-fashioned way you hardly ever saw by the 90s. She led them through these gorgeous corridors with Persian carpets and brass lanterns, past rooms full of cushions and low tables loaded with dates and Arabic coffee. The whole place smelled intensely of bukur. That's traditional incense made from wood chips soaked in fragrant oils, really common in the Gulf, but like a lot of it, almost too much. "You will perform here," she said, showing them to this big courtyard.
Is it to mask the smell? Because the title is She Sang at a Spirit's Wedding.
Yard open to the sky.
Or they don't even have bodies since it's a jinn. Jinns are supernatural beings in ancient Arabian religion and Islam. And they're not innately evil or good. Like, it depends on which side they wanna go, which is kinda interesting.
And there was a proper stage set up with outlets and everything. The bride arrives at midnight, started warming up at 10:30. Then she just disappeared before they could ask any questions. They set up their equipment while the women changed into their performance outfits. Those elaborate, heavily embroidered dresses and jewel tones, hair domed up high, full stage makeup. This was their work uniform, basically. Hassan got the sound system running, and they did a sound check around 10. But
Check
something
1, 2,
weird
3
happened during the sound check, though. Nora's voice echoed in this really strange way, like the space was too big and too small at the same time. She brushed it off as acoustics being weird. At 10:30, the guests started arriving.
The place is like an illusion.
Properly strange. They just appeared. Like 1 second an area would be empty,
they teleported.
and then you'd look again and there'd be a cluster of people there. They came in groups, women in traditional dress, men in white dishdashas, emerging from doorways, rounding corners, just suddenly being there. Within 20 minutes, the courtyard was absolutely packed.
It's a thing back
300 people, maybe more. Nora had performed for bigger crowds, so she wasn't intimidated. She nodded to her band, and they launched into a traditional welcome song. The crowd seemed to love it, ululating loudly, you know, that high-pitched trilling sound women make at celebrations, and they started to dance. But something felt off. At first, Nora couldn't figure out what was bothering her. The guests were enthusiastic, maybe a little too enthusiastic. They danced with this intense energy, with their movements strangely fluid and synchronized. It reminded her of
can participate in synchronized swimming in the Olympics.
Something, but she couldn't quite place what. She glanced over at Layla, who was playing mechanically, staring at nothing in particular. By 11:30, the weirdness had become impossible to ignore. The way these people moved, it wasn't quite human. That is the only way to describe it. Joints bending in ways that looked subtly wrong. They danced without stopping, without even pausing to catch their breath or chat with each other like people.
They are trying to shake away the rigor mortis. Too long no exercise or the
normally do at weddings. songs. The dancing was hypnotic, almost ritualistic, like the same movements repeating over and over in patterns that made Nora's head hurt to even watch. Some guests came up to the stage to offer congratulations and tips, totally normal wedding behavior. But when the first woman pressed money into Nora's hand, Nora felt something that made her blood run cold.
It's cold.
The woman's skin was burning hot, not like a fever, but like touching something metal that's been sitting in the sun, and hard, leathery, completely unlike human skin. The woman smiled with these really white teeth and went back to dancing. Nora caught Fatima's eyes across the stage. Her backup singer had gone pale under all her makeup, and her hands were shaking on the microphone. She'd felt it too when someone touched her. Nora gave a tiny shake of her head. Don't react. Keep performing. The night dragged on. Midnight came and went. No bride. The crowd kept dancing, getting more and more frenzied, more synchronized. Nora's throat was killing her, but she kept singing. Her professional training kicking in even as terror built in her chest. Next to her, Miriam was pounding the drums mechanically. Her jaw clenched so tight, it looked painful. And then sometime after midnight, Nora was never sure exactly when, everything changed. She was in the middle of a song when she noticed. At first, she thought the incense smoke had gotten thicker, making it hard to see. But then she saw clearly, and she wished she hadn't.
It came out from the smoke.
Of those guests weren't entirely human anymore. They ended in these hooved feet, dark and cloven like a goat's or sheep's.
It's always goats or sheep. I wonder why.
Hands, when they raised them while dancing, had these elongated fingers that
frigging real life furries, sheesh!
tapered to points, nails gleaming like horn. But their faces were still human, and that was somehow the worst part.
They don't look human now.
Smiling and laughing on top of these increasingly inhuman bodies, dancing, always dancing. Sarah's voice completely cracked. She'd stopped singing, just standing there with her mouth open, frozen. Hassan at the soundboard had gone gray, looking like he might pass out.
Gone gray.
Only Nora, Layla, Miriam, and Fatima kept going. Pure muscle memory and performance discipline.
So professional.
Terror. The things dancing, Nora couldn't think of them as guests anymore. They didn't seem to notice or care that the band was freaking out. They danced harder, their movements became unmistakably inhuman. So she kept singing, voice cracking, tears streaming down her face and ruining her makeup. The others kept playing, looking like they were barely holding it together. Time stopped making sense. Each song felt like it lasted hours. Nora's entire world became just next note, next breath, next moment of not
just
running,
ignore everything
not
happening.
Screaming. And then, at what her watch later told her was 3 a.m., every single light went out. The darkness was total, like, you know, how dark it gets in the deep desert. No street lights, no ambient glow,
the witching hour.
Moon that night. Nora literally couldn't.
And it's a new moon, holy shoes.
See her hand in front of her face. The music just stopped. Nobody decided to stop. Their hands just fell still in the dark. And with the music gone came silence. Complete, unnatural silence.
Oh no!
No breathing, no footsteps, just rustling fabric. The courtyard that seconds ago held hundreds of dancing figures was utterly, impossibly still.
Gone?
The temperature absolutely plummeted. Nora had been sweating in the August heat. Suddenly, her sweat felt icy on her skin. She could literally see her breath misting. Frost formed on the microphone under her fingers. Yalla, yalla. Layla's voice cut through the silence, raw and terrified. Yalla basically means let's go or hurry up in Arabic. You yell it when you need to move now. So
our yalla, it's like yeah.
They
over here.
They abandoned everything, all their instruments, the sound equipment, purses, shoes, everything.
I mean, take your purses.
Through the darkness. Nora's heels caught on a carpet and she kicked them off, running barefoot through corridors that seemed to twist and stretch impossibly. The mansion felt enormous inside, way bigger than it should have been. Corridors multiplying, rooms opening into other rooms
like
in
a
ways
lost
that made
kingdom.
no sense. And then suddenly they were outside. The desert, which had seemed so ominous approaching the mansion, now felt like salvation. Open space, stars,
Finally.
the distant glow of Kuwait
Stars.
City on the horizon telling them which way was home. They ran to their cars, fumbling with keys with shaking hands. Both engines started, thank God.
Thank God
And
they
just
remember
drove
their
into
car
the desert
keys.
without headlights, too scared to wait, too scared to look back. They navigated by moonlight until they hit the main road. They didn't stop until they saw that water tower again. Then they pulled into a patrol station on the outskirts of the city as dawn was breaking. Under the fluorescent lights, they looked at each other, faces streaked with tears and smeared makeup, hands still shaking, eyes haunted. Nobody spoke about what they'd seen, not then.
Nobody
What could
wants
they
to
even
talk
say?
anyways.
Nora went to the police the next day. They listened politely while she tried to explain what happened at a mansion in the desert. But when she tried to give them the address, that's when things got really weird.
It doesn't
An officer
exist?
actually drove out there with her. The water tower was there. The track into the desert was there. She could even see their tire marks from the night before in the sand. But there was no mansion. Where that huge house had stood, there was just desert, undisturbed sand,
It's a
some
mirage.
rocks, a few scraggly desert plants.
It's what the desert
No
do.
foundation, no debris, no sign anything had ever been there. The officer looked embarrassed for her and suggested maybe heat exhaustion, stress, maybe someone had pranked her by leading her to an empty plot. But Nora knew what she'd seen. They'd all seen it. So she went to the library and dug through old
Finally, someone does this. Like, most of the time, you don't want to say anything and just go on with your life. But she actually dug in through the records.
old records, newspaper archives, property registries, and finally, in some dusty file of historical documents, she found it. A mansion matching that exact description had existed in that location.
Darn it, you
But
did
the
not
mansion
take
had been
picture.
abandoned in 1987, exactly 10 years before Nora's performance. In the weeks after, Nora tried to contact the man who'd hired her. Disconnected number. The courier
Wait,
company
how
had
about the
no
money?
record of delivering that money.
That's the most important part. You can sing to the spirits, but the money needs to be usable. Don't tell me it changed into leaves the next day.
It was like the whole thing never existed.
How about the
And
money?
Nora, she never performed again. She was only 35 at the peak of her career. When people
Damn.
asked why she'd retired so suddenly, she gave vague
trauma.
answers about wanting to focus on family, about the demanding schedule, whatever. People who knew her well could tell something had happened, but they didn't push. But the story got out eventually. Stories like that always do in Kuwait. It's a small place, everyone talks. It spread through whispers and got more elaborate and less believable
Who
with each
snitched?
retelling. Some said she'd seen ghosts at a wedding. Others said it was all a hoax, that she made it up for attention before retiring.
But she
But
wanted
people
to
who knew
retire.
Nora, who saw that haunted look that never left her eyes, knew she was telling the truth. In Islamic tradition, Djinn are real beings, created from a smokeless fire, living parallel to us, able to take different forms. They are basically supernatural creatures mentioned in the Quran, not genies from Aladdin, but actual
Yeah.
entities with free will. They marry, they celebrate, have families, die just like humans, but according to their own ways. Sometimes through accident or
interesting.
intention, the worlds overlap, and humans end up somewhere they were never supposed to be. And there are rules, apparently,
Like an alternate universe, but everyone's a furry or something.
for these encounters. You have to be respectful. Once you accepted their hospitality, you can't just leave. You can't
Wait.
insult them or freak out. You recite
I'm sorry.
protective prayers, keep your cool, and only leave when dismissed. By continuing to perform, even as reality twisted around her, by fulfilling the
very
contract
professional
despite her
though.
terror, maybe Nora accidentally followed these rules.
Uh-huh.
She and her band were allowed to leave, traumatized, but alive. The mansion, if it was ever really there, is gone. The desert around Kuwait holds a lot of secrets. The traditional desert nomads who've crossed these lands for centuries know this. Sometimes the old folks say, we're not the only ones celebrating the desert night. Sometimes the Djinn have their weddings too. And if they call for musicians, they expect to be entertained. And Nora knows this now. She lives quietly in the Kuwait city with her family. She doesn't perform anymore, but sometimes hums old songs to her grandkids. She never drives toward Jara. She never answers calls from numbers she doesn't recognize.
It could be a scam call.
August, when it gets hot and thick with desert dust, she locks her doors at sunset and burns bukhor until dawn, praying that whatever still dances in that empty place in the desert has forgotten about the singer with a beautiful voice who once performed for them. Some invitations should never be accepted, and some performances are meant to last forever. And that was one hell of a story, right?
That's kind of romantic in its own way, you know? I do wonder what will happen if they freak out when they notice something different. Because they continue to perform, right? But what if they freak out before? Although we do have like performing to the spirits kind of thing, but at least the performers knows that they are performing to the spirits. This one she doesn't know. Anyways, if you enjoyed Megan's story, do check out her channel, and I will see you tomorrow.